From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
And good morning. Welcome to Montana This Morning. I'm Andrea Lutz. Victoria has the morning off. We do begin on the fire line in Muscle County. Firefighters will focus their attention on the PETERSON fire, but rocky terrain is making it difficult. The MY complex is made up of 3 fires, which are inching closer to the mop-up phase. The biggest problem is the PETERSON fire 12 miles south of Melstone. Officials say the terrain doesn't allow for fire crews to put equipment down or get any sort of effective hand lines. But there is some good news, as some recent evacuation orders have been lifted.
So most currently we had evacuations issued from Muscle County yesterday on the PETERSON fire. Those were actually just lifted. There is one piece of that that's still included, so it's from the Queens Point Road east to the fire's edge is still in effect. The rest of the evacuation area has been lifted.
Combined, the MY complex fires have burned 28,000 acres. With so many fires in the state right now, leaders say they have to prioritize the best ways to use their firefighting resources. MTN's Jonathan Anbarian finds out what they're doing to stay ahead of the flames.
Leaders with Montana DNRC say this weekend's fires are a good reminder of the need to be ready to respond.
Across the entire Northern Rockies, we've seen an increase in fire activity, and with the conditions are forecast to be hot and dry for the foreseeable future. So we expect to continue to need to share and coordinate amongst ourselves and partners for the duration of the summer.
Leaders estimate several thousand people, from local volunteers to state and federal agencies, are currently working on suppressing fires across Montana. While fewer new fires were reported on Sunday, several that started earlier in the weekend grew hundreds or thousands of acres. More than 200,000 acres have already burned this year across the Northern Rockies region, which includes Montana, northern Idaho, and North Dakota. At the DNRC Central Land Office in Helena, one of the key goals is to coordinate with other agencies so they can all get resources where they can do the most good. DNRC will also be closely watching the conditions to try to be prepared on days when many fires might blow up.
For example, if we had a red flag warning, we'll extend the staffing hours, and we'll also pre-position resources in areas where there has been lightning or there might be projected to be lightning, just to reduce response times and make sure that we have resources ready to move as quickly as possible when the starts are detected.
Leaders say they are asking for assistance from out of state, but how quickly those resources arrive will depend on the fire situations in their regions. DNRC estimates the fuel conditions they're seeing now in the state would typically come several weeks later in the summer, and they're asking everyone to take those conditions seriously.
We do have a significant number of fires that have been started by lightning, but we also have an uncomfortable number of fires that have been caused by humans, and so we ask that when the public is out and about recreating, that they do their part to help prevent wildfires in Montana.
The Northern Rockies area remains at fire preparedness level 5, the highest level of concern. In Helena, Jonathan Anbarian, MTN News.
And those with the DNRC say they'll expand air detection patrols to look for signs of fire, and they'll be asking people to report any new columns of smoke that they might see. All right, Miller Robson joining us now as we're taking a look at the forecast on this Tuesday. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you holding up this morning, huh?
I'm good. Yeah, you know, I don't sleep at all these days anyway.
With that little one who's teething right now?
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
Sleep is just a commodity at this point.
Well, we've got lots of coffee, Mountain Dew if we have to. We can hop you up full of caffeine this morning.
All of the sugar we can think of. I'll get there.
Get you taken. Yeah. Well, it's good to see you this morning. Let's start off with the smoke and the wildfire. This is where we are right now. Moderate to heavy smoke around the state. Now, off on western Montana, definitely going to see some issues today up in the higher elevations as well. But maybe those winds hopefully will shift a little bit and the air quality will improve a little bit later on today. We'll take a look at that here in just a bit with the main forecast. Right now, we do have some smoke across Yellowstone County. Otherwise, we're at 65 with some clouds out there, humidity at 40%. Winds out the northeast at about 10 miles an hour for us is blowing those fires in from Muscle Shell, which hopefully that will dissipate as we go along this afternoon. Quickly inside the numbers, I always like to crunch numbers. Yesterday our high right on target where we should be for this time of the season. A little bit warmer than normal in the morning. Of course, no rain yesterday. We're falling behind for the month. We're over 4 inches in the hole for the year. Now we definitely have a good chance to see some rain today. Now, we want the rain, Andrea.
Yeah.
We just don't want the severe weather. And unfortunately, that's something we'll be staring down later today. We'll take a look at when it could happen and where it could happen with the main forecast coming up.
Well, sometimes seems like those things go hand in hand this time of year.
Yeah,
So.
isn't it crazy like that? Especially when it gets so hot and that instability. Yeah, look out.
Okay. All right, Miller. Thanks so
Okay.
much. We'll check in with you in a little
You
bit.
hang in there. Remember, lots of caffeine and sugar this
I'm
morning.
trying as hard as I can to just get as much coffee as I possibly can. But then, you know, you have to go to the bathroom all the time, and that doesn't work either. So trying to figure it out.
On that note, you might want to start doing the news real quick.
All right, Miller, thanks so much. All right, $17 million. That's the amount the city of Billings has agreed to pay for the vacant Stillwater building downtown. City Council approved that purchase just last night to turn the property into the new Law and Justice Center. More room was needed for city offices. A majority of the building and remodeling costs will be paid using the general fund. On top of the $17 million price tag, officials estimate renovations will cost another $10 million. The controversy surrounding a proposed natural gas-fired power plant in Laurel isn't going anywhere. MTN's Mike Dennison looks into concerns of some of Montana's largest cities who say the plant would hurt their plans to go green.
Last year, the city and county of Missoula forged a memo of understanding with Northwestern Energy to work toward Missoula's goal of 100% clean electricity consumption in its urban area by 2030. Bozeman and Helena also have joined Missoula to form the Big Sky Energy Collaborative to meet similar green energy goals in their respective cities. So when Northwestern announced in May that a natural gas-fired power plant is a cornerstone of its proposal to produce more power into the future, the cities were not happy.
A plan that locks Montana consumers into a rate structure that involves burning of fossil fuels for 30 years is contrary to our goals. We don't believe you can get from here to there using the resource mix that they're proposing.
Both Missoula County and the city also plan to raise their objections as official parties before the Public Service Commission, which will decide next year whether to approve the proposed new gas-fired plant. Diana MANETA is the Sustainability Program Manager for Missoula County and worked on the Memo of Understanding with Northwestern.
I would argue that at this particular moment in history, any proposal to build new fossil fuel resources deserves serious scrutiny. Sitting here in the middle of this heat wave, these are the kind of extreme conditions that scientists are telling us we're going to be experiencing more frequently and more intensely in the coming decades unless we get on this and do something about it.
MANETA says the county and the city had hoped their agreement with Northwestern would lead to development of large-scale renewable power projects like wind or solar power. But the cities are continuing to work with Northwestern on a related initiative, a new exclusively green energy product that electric consumers in the three cities can pay a special rate to obtain. This proposal may be submitted to the PSC later this year for review and possible approval. However, Northwestern Vice President John Hines warns that a 100% green product will be more expensive and says the company won't allow customers not choosing the rate to subsidize it.
We'll be gladly to walk hand in hand with them to the commission to get a tariff that reflects that and find those resources for them. But again, there's significant reliability and cost issues associated with that.
Missoula and Bozeman officials acknowledge that they can't achieve their clean energy goals without the help of Northwestern. Yet they also indicate they're willing to push hard to sway the company and regulators on the issue of renewable power. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
And the PSC won't decide on the natural gas-fired plant until early next year after a series of legal filings, testimony, and hearings. New this morning, another Democrat announces she's running for Montana's newest House seat. CORA NEUMANN is a health policy expert from Bozeman. The 46-year-old briefly ran for the U.S. Senate in 2020, but withdrew after Governor Steve Bullock got into the race. NEUMANN joins two other women also running as Democrats, State Representative Lori Bishop of Livingston and Missoula attorney Monica Tranel. Former State Senator Al Olszewski and former Congressman and U.S. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke are the Republicans in the race. More than 607,000 Americans have died from the coronavirus, and health officials say almost all new deaths are people who are not vaccinated. But there's a new issue concerning the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. CBS's Tina Kraus has more.
A new warning about Johnson & Johnson's one-dose coronavirus vaccine. The FDA says out of the 12.8 million Americans who've gotten the shot, about 100 people developed a rare but serious autoimmune disorder called Guillain-Barré. The cases have generally been reported in men 50 and over about 2 weeks after receiving the shot.
We've seen this with one of the influenza vaccines a couple of decades ago. The good news is it looks like it's extremely rare.
The FDA says the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the potential risks.
We had this beat.
Dr. Peter Hotez notes the vaccines have allowed some areas of the country to safely resume pre-pandemic life.
Now we've squandered that opportunity partially, at least in parts of the country. If the Delta variant is allowed to accelerate, sure, I think we could see additional variants.
Since just last week, average daily cases in the U.S. are up 30%, more than a third of them in 5 hotspots.
Everyone's tired of hearing about COVID. We're tired of COVID too.
KAYLA Hillis is a nurse at Cox Medical Center Branson in Missouri. The hospital is sharing video diaries from employees in hopes their messages get through.
Even if you don't think it's COVID, if you think you have a cold, give it a couple of days. Stay at home. Just see how it goes.
Meanwhile, Pfizer officials met with the White House to discuss offering a third shot to high-risk Americans. For now, the government says the booster is not necessary. Tina Kraus, CBS News.
And Israel started giving a third dose of the Pfizer vaccine to at-risk adults. As crews continue to search the rubble for more victims from the Florida building collapse, there's a debate over what to do at the site. Surfside's mayor says people are already referring to the location as a holy site. Survivors want the location to be turned into some kind of memorial, and officials say it's too early to determine what will happen as crews are still searching for victims. The number of confirmed deaths now stands at 94, with 22 people still unaccounted for. Democrats in the Texas legislature fled to Washington, D.C. They're trying to halt a controversial Republican effort to overhaul the state's election laws. As CBS's Laura Podesta explains, Democrats insist the extreme measure are due to barriers proposed on constitutional rights.
GOP leaders in Texas are proposing cutting back on early voting, banning drive-through voting, and making it a felony for voter applications to be sent to Texas voters. This is the Texas GOP's second crack at the bill after similar legislation failed to pass in May. Texas Democrats say it disproportionately affects minorities and people with disabilities. So more than 50 staged a dramatic walkout in Austin during the special legislative session and flew to Washington, D.C.
There is nothing special about this special session. This is a suppression session. We're not going to put up with that. Democracy is on the line. The eyes of the nation are on Texas.
With the legislation still on the table, many are refusing to fly back home.
That is why we are here, because we're not going to sit in Austin, in the House chamber, and watch the Republican majority steamroll the voting rights of our constituents. So we're fighting back.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott says he's committed to getting the so-called Senate Bill 7 passed at all costs.
I will be calling special session after special session after special session all the way up until Election Day of next year if I have to.
The governor insists the Democrats who fled will face legal consequences. He says once they return to Texas, they'll be arrested and brought to the Capitol. Laura Podesta, CBS News.
And on a national level, Democrats already tried and failed to pass a sweeping bill to bolster American voting rights. Just like clockwork, the third weekend in July signifies the Big Sky State Games here in Billings. Q2's Scott Breen shows us what you need to know heading into Friday.
Hi everybody, Scott Breen on the Pioneer Park tennis courts, just one of many sites in and around Billings where you'll find state games action this weekend. They're celebrating 36 years of grassroots sports here in Montana, a weekend that's blossomed from 12 sporting events to 38, talking about a spectrum from curling to cornhole, disc golf to dance sports. Now, one big thing to know about this weekend's games in contrast to just a year ago.
We're so grateful we don't have a mask mandate this year, and we're able to bring basketball back in the mix of things, indoor basketball. So we're at 6 different facilities. We've got about 120 different teams, and so we're just super excited.
Each year, of course, they bring in a former Olympian to light the opening ceremony's torch. This year, another homegrown standout, Mary Osborne Andrews. After a wonderful career at Stanford, she was a member of the 1980 Women's Javelin U.S. Olympic team. Osborne Andrews will be honoring her late brother Tom Osborne, who of course founded these very Big Sky State Games almost 4 decades ago, but passed away unexpectedly in March.
I was an intern in 1998, and so I was able to work with Tom, and yeah, he was a wonderful man, and we're just so grateful he, started the games, and he's going to be dearly missed this year.
Well, no doubt there'll be a special vibe this weekend remembering Mary's brother, Tom Osborne. He, of course, spearheaded so many Big Sky State Games torch lightings, including the original back in 1986 with Julie Brown. Scott Breen, MTN Sports.
And gates open at 5:30 Friday night for opening ceremonies at Dalis Stadium. It's free to the public, and they have another loaded field for this year's Montana Mile to begin at around 8. And thanks for joining us this morning on Montana This Morning. Coming up, it's part of everyone's day in Japan, a synchronized stretch. After the break, we'll tell you why they do it and why the tradition almost didn't survive. The time now is 5:15. It's 64 degrees outside on this Tuesday. We'll be right back.